A special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catalfamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. I'd like to thank you for joining me. On today's show, we are talking Montezuma Castle and Tuzigoot National Monument, and we are speaking with the new superintendent of both of those parks, Lloyd Masayumptewa. Lloyd, welcome onto the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you, sir. I want to start off first and foremost. You have a passion for archaeology. You have a passion for monuments like the one behind me, which is actually right here. That is Montezuma's Castle behind me. And I want to start off with this because you've got a family connection. Tell me more just kind of about your background. You grew up in a very interesting time. We were talking a little bit before the show. Talk about your family background. What just kind of got you interested in archaeology, which led you to Northern Arizona University?
Well, my family background, as I was talking to you about earlier, is I grew up in a more traditional setting in the village of Oraibi. We call it Oraibi, and back then, mid '60s, early '70s, just the '60s, early '70s, and the structures back then were very similar to what you have there behind you. Tuzigoot, Montezuma Castle, Wapatki, Mesa Verde, all these places like that. And, growing up in a village setting like that with elders and being raised by my grandparents specifically, that, there are a lot of stories about these very places that are told to you when you're growing up. And, the various clans, my clan didn't come from this particular setting, but through the years, my bloodlines cross, and so you know that you're somehow connected to these places, and so that was my main draw, and just by pure accident, more or less, that I got into archaeology, because prior to that, I was the electronic technician for Motorola for 11 years, living in Phoenix. Didn't like the city life, so I quit my job and moved back north. Couldn't find a job in anything, and decided to go back to school. Yeah. And I had tried to become a psychologist early on, and meeting up with a couple of professors from NAU, they kind of steered me toward more cultural anthropology to begin with, until I took a ruins preservation workshop while working for the. Well, I was still going to school. And then that's how I got into the Park Service, because they had, from NAU, they had made a connection with the Park Service in the flag areas. And they put on this workshop, and we're able to work out there. And during that time, not only at Wapatki, but we were able to go and visit some other places. And, just that whole visit to these places and the stories that were told to me when I was younger, it was just like, I guess a fulfilling moment for me, because it really, filled those gaps that I had questions about. Having been told about these places, not knowing if they still really existed, and being able to go out there. And then the one thing is, the main thing for me was that I was able to go and visit these places, knowing that my ancestry came from here. And, the Hopi people have just a long history in the Southwest. We consider ourselves the first people of this area. Montezuma, that's what we call ourselves. Knowing that a lot of our family lineage passed through these areas, built these places, and then moved on. Stories that go with it, it's long stories, so I won't go into that much, but that's what really got me into archaeology to begin with. But the component of it was for me, because for Hopi, and I think a lot of Pueblo, they don't want to speak for the other Pueblos, that these places that our ancestors left, we'd rather see them naturally go back to their earth. But there's a component of it where I felt after a while, after working on these places, that we should preserve some of these places in the way that we are, not the way that they had begun in the Park Service by using cement and all these other modern kind of materials to preserve them, because it really took away from them. And so, just that whole idea of being able to be in these places and preserving, and then going back to the component of educating our youth, because these days in this modern society, all our kids are so acculturated into the mainstream society. A lot of them don't know about our history, unfortunately, especially those ones that have moved out of the reservation, those that have decided just to really not be involved in any of our cultural things or our history. But I know that through time, some of the kids want to learn. And so having these places and having certain families hold these stories for them and make these connections is huge. And so, that's my part in it. And as I went along, and the management of these places, and the various superintendents that I've worked for, they had a different mindset about things, and their focus is on different things. And, I didn't want to go down that road. I really felt that, we really, if anything, we really need to focus on these places and tell a story that's more true, because a lot of stories early on, were a lot of fabrications and a lot of stuff that archaeologists theorized. Those are the basis for a lot of these interpretive things, and half of it to me wasn't accurate. And so through time, with the new archaeologists, like I have to give credit to folks like Dr. Chris Downham at NAU, Miguel Vasquez, folks like that, Dr. Smiley as well up there, and Kelly Hayes Gilpin, folks like that. They also wanted to make things right. And so the narrative slowly is changing, and a lot of the their reporting has changed as well, where the connection is more made to the living descendants, because in previous archaeology reports and things like that, our ancestors just disappeared. Where did they go? There's a huge question mark, and that was one of the narratives that a lot of these units were telling. Say, where did they go? It's like they don't exist anymore. But here we are.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. You talk about the history of that area, and the people who were there way before the United States became a nation. I mean, there were people here before the English colonizers came over and created the 13 colonies, and which eventually led to the 50 states. And you talk about preservation. You're clearly very, very passionate about this. We do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk more about the park specifically and more about why it's important to preserve things like Montezuma's Castle, which is behind me. So when we come back, we'll talk more with Superintendent for Montezuma Castle and Tuzigoot National Monuments, Lloyd Masayumptewa. On the other side of this break, stay with us. Countywide, we'll be right back.
Terrifying jobs. Bull Rider, take 2.
Cliff, this seems like a really terrifying job. Why do you do it?
I love protecting the bull riders when they get bucked up.
How big are these bulls?
12 to 2,200 pounds of pure muscle.
You're not cowed by any of this, obviously. Is there anything that scares you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
The EPA says C&B Construction ranks in the top 1% nationally. C&B Construction invites you to see what energy efficiency and indoor air quality can be. We have won another Department of Energy Innovation Award, and C&B Construction is the only contractor in the country to win 6 consecutive EPA Indoor Air Plus awards. Experience our zero-energy, move-in-ready homes at Crossroads at Mingus.
C&B Construction, locally respected, nationally recognized. Find out more at C&B Homes.com.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
I want to welcome you back to Countywide. On today's show, we are speaking with Superintendent for Montezuma Castle and Tuzigoot National Monuments, Lloyd Masayumptewa. Lloyd spoke about his background and sort of the importance of preserving structures like Montezuma Castle and Montezuma Well and just Tuzigoot National Monument in general. Lloyd, now that you're in this position as the superintendent, you've talked a little bit about your past, some of the other roles that you served. Let's talk about some of the goals that you now have now that you're in the superintendent role. What are some of those goals that you have?
So if you want me to go ahead and start with some of the roles that I've had in my past Park Service career, I actually started as a student at the Flag Area National Monuments, kind of, I guess, midlife, if you call it 33, midlife. I was going to school at the time. I started off pursuing a bachelor's degree in archaeology, and then was kind of forced to get a master's degree in archaeology in order to maintain a job with the Park Service. Okay. So I did that for several years. I worked under a great supervisor, or supervisors, a couple of them that I did work for, Al Remley and Todd Metzger. And they were also you know, in a similar lines of preserving and passion. And then they, you know, those, I have to give credit to those two also, because they understood where we were coming from. Because I wasn't the only Hopi that was working there. We had 4 other Hopis that were working there, doing this work for them, and they allowed us to, you know, do our work the way we felt it should be done. But also, you know, following the guidelines that that guide preservation methods and things like that. Right. You want to ask me that question again?
Yeah, no, just some of the goals that you might have. Yeah, some of the goals that you have for the park in general now that you're the superintendent.
Some of the goals is well, one of the main things is I already alluded to this before, is the narrative. And just kind of making some modifications to the narrative about the connections, and you know, going through their what is this called, the foundation document. I realized that they didn't really include too much of that in their foundation document, whereas other parks have made those connections to those affiliated tribes a bit more so. But you know, certainly the connections and the descendants of these places, and how they're connected to these places, is something that I'd like to, I guess, touch on a little bit more for that interpretive program. Right. The other things are, you know, the upkeep of the parks and the continued maintenance and utilizing, hopefully, the descendants of these places as well, and bringing them on to do the work, because I think that means a lot to that, adds a lot to that. And not only that, you know, if there is a way to get descendants to come and be a part of the interpretive program as well, you know, to provide this story. Because, you know, when I was working in the Flag Area Monuments, we did a lot of work on the main front country sites, and a lot of the visitors would stop and ask question after question, and then they would ask you, why don't you have your people in an interpretive program telling these stories themselves? And you know, that's something that I really couldn't directly answer, because it's a management thing. Right. And I think that's one of the faults of the Park Services, and they know it too. And I think they're slowly trying to work on that. But it's long overdue, and so hopefully we can do something about that down the road. Aside from that, one of the bigger projects, things that impact our resources is Mother Nature and what's out there. And over at the well, we have an issue with the outlet where the canal it's got some undercutting that's developed, and a couple of major places that the undercutting has developed is underneath the sidewalks, and so it's a bit sketchy out there right now. We have a project proposal in, and hopefully with the Great American Outdoors Act, it'll be funded. But we're just in a line because the dollar amount didn't appeal to those in Washington, because they wanted to give money to those parks that had high dollar amounts. But we'll see what happens with that, because we do need to put some work into that. We probably have to close that area off again for a period of time to do that. We had closed it off, but luckily we had guys that knew about irrigation a little bit, and were able to get liners to put into the canal where the main problem areas are. And so once that was done, I opened the trail back up to a certain distance so people can go and go down to that area and visit it. And recently we also had, seasonally, let me go back a bit. Seasonally, we have a swallow closed at the well because of the bat mating season. And just before we were going to open up, we had a tree fall, and it fell right into the drainage area. And so we had to have that cleaned up. And just this past Monday, we had arborists come out, a crew of arborists come out and limit and then provided us an opportunity to go ahead and open it back up. So as of yesterday, that swallow trail is open. So, small things like that can become big problems if we don't keep an eye on things. And so, there are a number of other small things that we need to tend to. But aside from that, just trying to maintain these parks so that our visiting public is happy. And, we've never, I don't think I've had any kind of really bad remarks about anything that we're providing to the visiting public.
Well, I mean, you talk more about preserving the history of that, and I mean, Montezuma's castle itself has been around for hundreds of years. I mean, we have multiple. You see, obviously, there's a painting behind me about it, but we have multiple of these sort of stand-up paintings of various, key areas. Not all of them, of course, but good various areas of Yavapai County, of some of the monuments, the Red Rocks of Sedona, Watson Lake, and Prescott. Behind me, Montezuma's castle, of course. And what's interesting is when I first started working here, I obviously wasn't familiar with Montezuma's castle. And this was one of the first photos that kind of caught my eye. I was like, oh, I wonder what that is, because you wouldn't expect it to be that old. I mean, it looks. Even I'm not sure how old this photo is, but if you look at photos of Montezuma's castle now, I mean, it looks like it did, I would assume, back then. I mean, maybe a few modifications here and there over the years just to help with some of that preservation. But I mean, it is crazy how long this thing has been up, considering how old it is. Yeah,
the construction date that's given to it, and this is from tree ring dating, is 1100. Yeah. The 1100s. And so, there's a lot of these places that were either being constructed or constructed at that time, but more than likely, this place was already starting to be built before the 1100s. Yeah, so
yeah, it's
greater than that. It's just an estimation that archaeologists give it. But if you look at just how things develop, and through the span of time with the movement of the folks, throughout this area, you gotta believe that the inception was before.
I just got to cut you off real quick because we got to go to break, but we'll pick that back up here in a little bit. We'll talk just kind of briefly in the final segment about just sort of how long this castle's been around and why it's important to preserve it. Countywide, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Hi, this is Greg at Verde Solar Power. You know, Arizona has lots of clean, renewable sunshine, and we want to help you take advantage of it with our quality solar installations, and we offer to beat any written offer on a residential solar electric system. So bring us your electric bill and let us show you how solar power will save you money. We're located conveniently here in the Verde Valley and are dedicated to helping the valley go solar. So remember, the energy solution comes up every morning.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle, get Gettles.
Back to Countywide. On today's show, we are speaking with the new superintendent of Montezuma Castle and Tuzigoot National Monuments, Lloyd Masayumptewa. Lloyd, before we went to break, we were talking just how old this structure has been around for. Montezuma's Castle has been around for a very, very long time. Please, we were talking a little bit before we headed to break. We've got about 3 minutes, so just how long really has this structure been around? Because it doesn't look how old it actually is.
Well, according to archaeology and gender chronology, it's been around for about 600 plus years. So that's a rough estimate. But I believe it's probably been around a bit longer than the 600-700 years that we put a date on. So yeah.
Yeah, 700 years is an incredibly long time. What about just general information, Lloyd? We talk about the preservation efforts. I mean, how can people get involved with that effort? What website should they go to? And if they want to go visit the park, is it open?
The park is open. We are open 24/7 currently. 8 to 5. Generally, we start shooing people out of the park about 4:45. And so, one of the things that we are limiting folks in is the visitor center. Due to COVID right now, we have a limit of 15. And people have been pretty open to that. And, we haven't had any real issues in regards to the limiting of folks into the visitor center. But we've had one thing that I want to bring to light is we've had issues with overflights. We've had a lot of pilots neglecting our request to stay away or at least keep to a 2,000 AGL limit, and we've had a number of flights. And this is another problem where that noise creates issues because it vibrates. The noise reverberates in the alcove setting, so it loosens the material that keeps the place together. So anybody, if you have any friends that can advocate for that to keep to that requested limit. It's nothing, they're not breaking the law, but it's an ask of us to the pilots to refrain from getting beyond that 2,000 threshold.
Yes, we do have again, Lloyd, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and talking about the parks. Again, Montezuma Castle and Tuzigoot National Monuments Superintendent Lloyd Masayumptewa. Lloyd, you are a wealth of knowledge, and thank you very much, sir, for coming on and talking about your job and your passion regarding archaeology and these beautiful historic sites.
Thank you for having me.
That is going to do it for this episode of Countywide. I'm Philip Catalfamo, wishing you a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again next time.